Cori Bush is really showing some backbone here and some spine here, regardless of what you think of this particular political position that she's taking. But she's been getting a bunch of crap from fellow elected Democrats because she ran on Defund the Police. And that's a very unpopular slogan. It only has an 18% approval rating in the country. We've talked about this before. But Cori Bush, when people brought this to her attention, she was like, I don't care. I'm going to run on this. Shut up. Whoa. So let me go ahead and show you the article, and then we'll break it down further. This is an Axios. Representative Cori Bush says she's not going to stop using the slogan defund the police ahead of this fall's midterms, even though some of her colleagues have made that request. Progressives, and that slogan specifically, were blamed for Democratic losses in 2020. The 2022 midterms are even more challenging, yet Bush said during an hour-long conversation with black reporters that she's sticking to her activist roots. I always tell fellow Democrats, if you all had fixed this before I got here, I wouldn't have to say these things, she said. Bush acknowledged her party needs to do a better job of explaining exactly what it means with its call to shift some law enforcement monies to preemptive social services. If Democrats lose their House majority this November, Bush says she'll blame their inability to pass crucial pieces of legislation upon which members campaigned a year ago. Defund the police is not the problem, she added. We dangled this carrot in front of people's faces and said, we can get it done, and that Democrats deliver when we haven't totally delivered. If Republicans take the majority, it's just done as far as trying to get the legislation across, Bush said. Progressives are always viewed by moderates as a thorn in the side of the larger party, and Democrats are already starting a difficult election cycle. Okay, so let me break this down in a number of different ways. Again, on the issue of defund the police specifically, that slogan, I do not support it. It's got an 18% approval rating. Regardless of what's meant by it, I know how it's interpreted, and it's interpreted in a way that's like everybody thinks it's abolish the police. Now, if you talk to activists, there is a split in the activist community. Some people do go as far as saying it is like abolish the police. Okay. But some people say it's not abolish the police. Defund the police means take anywhere up to like 50% of the police budget and reallocate that money to basically social services. So you could have some emergency response institution that's set up where somebody's having a mental health crisis. Maybe the person who shows up doesn't have a weapon and they're an expert in mental health. And so this is the general idea behind it. Now, again, the landscape is very broad, and there are many differing opinions on this. Some people do say, no, defund means defund. Other people do say, no, defund just means cut a certain percentage. Again, anywhere from like 20% to 50%, because police budgets in big cities are generally gigantic. Cut anywhere from 20% to 50%, reallocate that into, things other than the police that can respond to certain emergency situations. Okay, so in the case of Cori Bush specifically, I do not have a problem with her running on defund the police. Why? Why? Because it is important. She represents Ferguson, Missouri. Ferguson, Missouri is, of course, famous for their police abuse. And we know, because it happened already, Cori Bush won in Ferguson, Missouri. She's like one of the only, maybe the only national level Democrats who runs on defund the police. And she won. Now, I would not say, well, you got to extrapolate that and all the other districts should run on defund the police. No, I just told you, it's got an 18% approval rating. But Cori Bush just happens to be in one of the few districts in the country where if you run on that, it is not a liability. It's provably not a liability. She won. So I would tell her, you do exactly what you did before and you follow your instincts because your instincts clearly worked. She had won previously and she lost, but now she ran and she won, and that was her message. And I have no doubt that she's fighting on this front for things that she thinks are the solution. So I have no problem with her running on it, and I commend her for sticking to her guns and saying, no, I'm going to run on this thing because I believe in this thing, and so if you don't like it, piss off. I respect that. For once, you have a Democrat with backbone. Where I differ is, nationally, it's a terrible slogan and a terrible strategy, and other Democrats should not copy that. Maybe there's like a handful of other districts where you can use that and win. Fair enough. But I think most, I wouldn't do that. And also, there is a broader problem on the left, more generally speaking, where, especially among activists, where they like to make their position sound as extreme as you can, which is not the way you do traditional politics. The way you do politics is to try to make yourself sound appealing to everybody. But if you say defund the police, that sounds incredibly unappealing, and everybody thinks it's abolish. And again, it only polls at 18% for a reason. But there's a bigger issue here, a much bigger issue here, which is Cori Bush is right that all the time the so-called moderates are blaming the left all the time for every problem. No, 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 no. We know, as a matter of fact, objectively speaking, you guys are the problem. You're telling me Build Back Better, every provision was incredibly popular, whether it's elder care, universal pre-K, free community college for 2 years, lowering prescription drug prices, expanded child tax credit, Medicare expansion. You had all these things that were popular. You guys failed to pass it. The so-called moderates were the problem. Really, they're corporatists. Manchin, Sinema, these people were the worst. So you guys tank a popular legislative agenda, and then you turn around and blame the left like it's the left's fault. No, 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 no. It is your fault. It is your fault. So that's the main thing I object to in this conversation. This idea, moderates always act like they have the answers and you cannot prove them wrong. They think they have unfalsifiable positions. Like, if you go out there and say, it is better to be more centrist and moderate and pro-corporate, well, that's a testable claim. It's a testable claim. So here's one piece of evidence to the contrary. In 2018, every single Democrat in the midterms who ran on Medicare for All won. Even in swing districts. Katie Porter, even in swing districts. The Blue Dog Democrats got their clocks cleaned. Got obliterated. So that matters. That evidence matters, and that disproves their theory. The so-called moderates, again, they're corporatists, they make up a majority of the party. The president is a moderate/corporatist. You guys have your exact governing philosophy and ideology in power right now. You have control right now. If this thing fails and doesn't work, which is exactly what's happening, it's failing and it's not working, that's on you. Own it. You got exactly what you wanted. Bernie Sanders isn't president. Bernie Sanders isn't president. You know, Sherrod Brown is not the head of the Democrats in the Senate, the majority leader. Cori Bush is not, Speaker of the House. If that was the situation and they were using their governing philosophy and they were failing, well, then you could blame the left. But no, this is on you. It's on you. Own it, own it, own it. So look, this stuff matters, man, because it doesn't matter what the question is. The answer is blame the left. This is always what moderate Democrats do. Moderate Democrats, centrist Democrats do. But really, it's their fault, and it's obviously their fault. Who were the biggest holdouts? It was Manchin. It was Sinema. Story after story. They took $1 million from Pharma. They took $1 million from this Trump donor. And then what happened? They blocked everything. And then people have the nerve to turn around and blame Cori Bush. By the way, there was never a reckoning with the fact that progressives were proven 100% correct on splitting up the traditional infrastructure bill with Build Back Better. That was their point of leverage. We're not passing this traditional infrastructure bill unless and until you pass Build Back Better. End of conversation. It was the progressives, the furthest left members of the House who said, this is our position and we're sticking by it. And I think it was only 7 of them who held to that position, and they were proven right. And nobody ever in mainstream media or any corporate Democrats turned around and said, you know what, you were proven right. It's just a fact. So when progressives get things right repeatedly, they're proven objectively right, there's never a moment of reckoning. The media never says, well, what are you going to... look, we might not like these people, but they're right. It unfolded exactly as they said it would unfold. So look at how the game is rigged. Look at how the game is rigged. The corporatists never admit mistakes. They act like their beliefs are unfalsifiable. They always blame the left, and the left never gets credit when they're proven correct. And so you get this massively skewed conversation. Cori Bush is right. Not if the Democrats lose. When they lose, when they get blown out. It is definitely because Build Back Better failed. All those provisions were popular. We couldn't get them through, and that's the fault of Manchin, Sinema, Joe Biden, and Democratic leadership, who either didn't believe in it enough to fight for it or just don't have the ability to fight and don't know how to fight to get these things through. The left was right every step of the way. Jesus Christ. I have my own problems with them, their own strategic failings, and we've gone into that a million times, and we'll go into them a million more. But in this conversation, it's not an open question as who's to blame. So again, Cori Bush specifically, I have no problem with her running on Defund the Police. Me personally, I think Defund the Police is a terrible slogan. It polls at 18%. Regardless of what you think you mean, it's people here abolish the police, even if you're just saying, oh, redirect some of the money to social services. So I think we should try to frame our things in as wide appealing a way as possible. But having said that, for Cori in particular, she can run on this. It worked last time. It'll probably work again. She represents Ferguson, Missouri. Maybe there's a handful of other districts where I'd run on that, but broadly speaking, in the entire country, I wouldn't. Substantively, I would argue against the slogan. But really, it's an ancillary point. It's a side point. Don't miss the forest for the trees here. Because the fact of the matter is, the corporatists are deeply unpopular. They have all the power and all the control right now. They failed repeatedly. They've not only failed when it comes to messaging, they've also failed substantively. They can't get their legislative agenda through. They own all the failures. And they're refusing to take personal responsibility for that. And that is totally unacceptable. So on the broader point, Cori Bush is correct. And the left needs to reassert themselves. The corporatists need to sit down and shut up because they were proven wrong every step of the way. And if we ever get lucky enough to get to the point where it is the left that controls the messaging and controls the policy agenda and controls the fight, we would be much better off, and you wouldn't be talking about... Imagine Joe Biden. Just imagine this for a second. Imagine Joe Biden knew how to fight, knew how to twist arms, and actually believed in these things. And imagine, not only did we get those $1,400 checks, which went through, which is probably the best thing he did, but we also got $15 minimum wage. And we also got free community college. And we also got free pre-K. And he also abolished student loan debt. Imagine he did all those things. I guarantee you his approval rating would be over 50%. And we'd be talking about Democratic wins in the midterms, not inevitably getting blown out by a bunch of Trump-drunk idiots. Instead, here we are. Here we are, having the same conversation over and over how it's always the left's fault. Well, guess what? It's not. Not even close. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.